this lecture about surrogacy. I hear that there is a bill to legalize it here. So if anybody's interested in speaking about it or want to collaborate, please come up to me afterwards and we'll talk. My second book was about the Eurocriss, and especially in Greece, what's happened to Greece when the Troika came in and so on. And my third book was a collection of different texts, like anthology style. And I'm now writing a book about gender identity, what it is, and laws about self-identification of gender, and what it means for the women's movement. So if you're interested in that, you can also come up to me afterwards and we can talk about it. So having said that, the topic I'm going to speak about today is abuse. And more specifically, the difference between abusers in a democratic and in a dictatorship. So abuse today, and especially killings of women, femicide, have been a topic that has been raising movements ever since Me Too, especially in Spain and France. In Spain, the movement has been very successful, starting with the feminist group Feminicidio.net, which was a website that published all killings of women and documented these killings and what had been going on before. And this has led to Spain actually changing the whole mentality when it comes to killings of women. Now there is a specific government documentation of killings of women. Every time a woman is murdered by her partner, there is a minute of silence in state authorities and so on. And also in France, the same thing is happening. Now the problem with documenting killings of women and focusing on killings of women is, as we know, it's a catch-22. Because once a woman is dead, there's nothing more you can do in that case. And if a woman has not been killed yet, then of course it hasn't happened yet. So you cannot protest the killing before it's happened, because then people say, oh, it wasn't so serious. Of course no killing is going to take place in this case, right? So it's a catch-22 where you can't really do anything. In my opinion, the focus has to start whenever a man calls a woman a whore. Because you know that all abusers use these languages when they talk to the women that they later on are going to use. The word whore almost always figures in the way that he speaks to her. So the focus needs to be as serious when a man is calling a woman whore, when the verbal insults start, because that's when it can really make a difference. Now, this book I would recommend to everyone. This book is written by an American psychologist called Befem, who has worked 15 years with men who abuse women. And he has treated more than 10,000 of men who abuse women. And if you look up this book on Amazon, it's called Why Does He Do That? Inside the Minds of Angry and Controlling Men. If you look this book up on Amazon, it's very interesting because you're going to have like hundreds of reviews on this book. And almost all of them are by women who say, thanks to this book, I left my husband. And then you will have like 5 angry men also reviewing the book saying, because of your damn book, my wife left me, and you have incited all these women to leave their husbands for no reason, I hate you, and so on. So you know this book has a value when you read the reviews. What he says is that the key to understanding abuse is not how a man feels, it's how he thinks. And this is a conclusion that he got to after treating violent men for a number of years, when he first believed in their excuses, and after that started listening to what was really happening. And that was a key point, was when he was going to direct a play, like an educational play on men who abuse women. And in that play, he asked the abusers in the group that he was dealing with to help to direct this play and to say, what should the man say? Okay, so the woman is at home, the man is coming home, what does he say? And that's when he understood that a lot of these abusers are really conscious. When they make excuses, they might say, oh, I didn't know what I was doing, I was so angry and so on. But when they were giving suggestions for directing how the man should react, how the typical abuser should react, they say, no, you can't wait until she speaks, you have to attack first. So you have to first confront her and make her feel like she's guilty before she accuses you of cheating or whatever it is. So this led him to thinking that actually abusers are more conscious than what you might think. And that when they come up with excuses in court, like for example, oh, I didn't know what I was doing, I was drunk, I was angry, I didn't mean it, she provoked me and so on, they know that these are excuses and they really know what is going on. So this is what led to him writing actually a book about the strategies of men who abuse and the different strategies that abusers in contemporary society use. Because the truth is that abusers have changed according to the laws on abuse. As society is getting more and more aware of violence against women, abusers are also changing tactics. So they are more and more using tactics that are beyond reach of criminal law. And this is why abusers now are using more tactics such as, instead of saying, I'm gonna kill you, they say, I hope that you die, you know, which is, of course, not the same thing in the eyes of the law. A lot of the myths around abuse, you probably know them, are, for example, that women who fall victim to this are weak, that they have had a difficult childhood, that they are attracted to these men because they are looking for a kind of bad boy. This is the typical thing that like a guy that considers himself the good guy will say. He will say, oh, these women are falling for these men because they know what they're about, and so on. The truth is that abuse can happen to anyone. It's a lottery. It can happen to people who think that it shouldn't happen to them. Another myth is that these men have an anger problem, that they can't control their anger. Truth is, these men don't have a problem with their own anger. They have a problem with your anger, right? Another typical myth is that women should just leave. But of course, leaving doesn't end the abuse. Usually leaving escalates the abuse, because we know that it's when women leave that often the abuse gets really serious. And most women who are killed when they have left the abuse. So to tell women that they should just leave is also a way of not understanding that this might be the most dangerous moment, especially if you have kids with the abuser. So what is abuse? According to this book, abuse can be defined as any man who disrespects, who controls, who insults, and who devalues his partner. Of course, this can happen, of course, with women too, and it can happen in same-sex relationships. The difference is that it usually doesn't get that serious. It usually doesn't get that physical in relationships where women, for example, insult men, or where two women are living together and one of them is being abusive. It doesn't usually have the tragic consequences, and you don't have the full range of the spectrum either. The problem is often when you look up on the internet, when you look up abuse, you will have like the most tragic examples, and you will have the most extreme examples, which often leads to people thinking, oh, this is not me, or this is not him, or yeah, I feel really sorry for these women, but this is not happening to me. So the point is to recognize it when it starts at the level of insults, and when it starts at the level of manipulation or of verbal abuse, for example. So most abusive men don't seem like abusers. Most abusive men actually seem like great guys to the world. Most abusive men are people that if you would hear somebody say, oh, this is an abuser, you will say, no, not him. This is a great guy. An abusive relationship typically starts in a wonderful way. The abusive man will present himself as the dream guy. He will be everything that the woman desires, right? So it can be money, he can be extremely generous in the beginning. He can shower her with presents, or with trips, or with promises, often promises of like an eternal future together, like, oh, like you're the dream girl, like I've never met anybody like you, we're meant for each other, we should always stay together, and so on. However, this generosity can also be personalized according to what the specific woman's dreams are. So if you, for example, are a feminist, this man will present himself as the best feminist in the world. You know, he will not come with roses, of course, because he knows that you think roses are stereotypical and this is something from a movie. So his roses are feminism. His roses are his words saying that all these other guys who are like this, you know, I hate that, I'm not like them. The point here is not to listen to the words. The point here is to listen to the undertext, what is really happening. What is really happening is it sounds too good to be true, right? And if it sounds too good to be true, it often is. A lot of abusers, especially the narcissist ones, are copycats. So they will find out what the woman in question likes, what her interests are, like what her typical hobbies are, what her music taste is, and he will immediately adapt and start saying that he likes the same thing. If she says, I love this song, in the beginning he will say, I love this song too, isn't it great? Making her feel like she's met her soulmate, right? So a lot of the time he will ask very intimate questions in the beginning, which also makes the woman open up. She feels confident. She feels like she's really met somebody who understands her. And in opening up, she will divulge information that is crucial to him. Because with opening up, for example, about her fears, about her past traumas, about what she's been going through, about her past boyfriends, he will know how he's going to cater to her. So if she says, for example, oh, my past boyfriend was like this, he will, and I didn't like that, he will say, oh, I'm not like that at all. I hate men who are like that. I am like this, and so on. Also, this gives him information about her weaknesses, which he will later on use once he turns abusive. Now, a lot of people will ask, well, is he already planning to be abusive? Not on the conscious level. He's not planning it. Of course, he's also hoping for the dream relationship. But again, the key here is not what he feels, it's what he thinks. Because these men have a sense of entitlement and a sense of what a woman should be in a relationship. This means that once this relationship doesn't fulfill their standards of how a woman should behave, what she should be to him. And this doesn't have to be the typical things. It doesn't have to be that she should wait on him with a dinner every day. It can be that he thinks that she should agree with her on all political issues. And once she doesn't agree, oh, she's fallen down. And then the abuse starts. At this initial stage, the early warning signs might be an excessive show of generosity that is unwanted. For example, the man might say, oh, I'll come to pick you up at the airport. And she says, no, that's not necessary. Oh, come on, I'll do it anyway. That leaves the woman feeling like in debt to him, that she owes him something because he's being so nice. He often takes really good care in being excessively nice among her friends, to win her friends and especially her family over, so that all her friends are going to be like, oh my God, this is a great guy, this is a wonderful guy, oh, you're so lucky to have him, you should really go for this guy. If he wants to marry you, fantastic, just do it, right? So, early warning signs being an excessive show of generosity that might make her feel uncomfortable. Also, there is another documented example of an abusive man who later on killed his wife, that in the beginning, for example, he would say, oh, there is a lot of snow, I'll come and take the snow away from your doorstep. And she would say, you don't need to do that. Oh, I will do that anyway, and so on. So this is often a warning sign when he's giving you things that you don't actually ask for and make you feel like you owe him something. Plus, the typical thing, he will speak disrespectfully about his former partners. Now, of course, everybody can have bad luck. There are, of course, men who have had former partners that have treated them bad and so on. But I would go to the extent to say that if you, women here, will meet any man who will speak disrespectfully about a former girlfriend of his, always check with her, even though you hate her, even though you might think that she's the worst person that ever walked the face of the earth. Always check with her, what is her version? Because you might be surprised, she has a different version than he does, right? Often a man who really has been abused by a former partner will have understanding for abused women. Now, a man who is himself an abuser will often speak about women who are abused as exaggerating, about hating men, and so on. So there will be a key difference here. He can also be so cunning if he is the type that has had several women in the past and treated them all bad. Of course, he's not going to tell his new partner that all the women in his life have been bad, because she's just going to say, well, you know, that's too much of a coincidence, right? So he might divide them into different types of partners. He might say, oh, that girlfriend was really bad, but that one was great. She was fantastic. I just got bored of her, you know, but we never fought in 10 years. We always had a great relationship. So as to make you think that this is a guy who's capable of having great relationships. Again, do check. If you check with a person who was apparently a crazy bitch, and if you check with a person who was apparently in a great relationship with him, you also might be surprised. Another typical sign of an abusive relationship is things move very fast. Why? Often this guy gets tired of keeping up this good facade that he has in the beginning. So if you meet a great guy that seems to be amazing, and he wants to marry you straight away, and he wants to have kids, and he wants to move into a house, and he wants to create the dream life with you, you know, and of course all your friends are saying, oh, this is great, like you have this great chance, right? And if you don't act now, maybe he's going to disappear and find somebody else. This is a warning sign. If he is great and he wants to move really fast, and if he says that any doubt on your part, if you're doubting, like, should we really move this fast? Like, I'm not ready to move in with you, or I'm not ready to have kids right now or something, and he's like, come on, let's do it. This is also a warning sign. Like, if he is trying to make your doubts seem as proof that you don't love him enough. Often, the abuse starts when you're already in debt to him. Like, he's already made you feel like he's such a great person and you don't love him enough. And if you say, no, let's wait, he will say, oh, this shows you don't care about me. And you feel, oh, okay, I don't care about you. Okay, I'll just hurry up and show that I care. Because you do love him, you just don't want him to think that you don't want to have a life with him. You just don't want it right now, but you think if he wants it right now, okay, like, we'll move forward. Usually the abuse will start after the commitment. It's very frightening how some men, even the day after the wedding, change their face, right? It's usually after some type of tie that you cannot undo. Like, for example, you get married, you have children, you move in together, you buy a car together, or you have some kind of financial arrangement or emotional tie that you can't just get rid of. Then you feel safe, and then the abuse will typically start. Now, the cycles of abuse typically start out like this. Like, in the beginning, it's great. It's great, it gets better, and then you have one incident that you go, what is going on here? Like, all of a sudden the guy will have like a bout of anger from nowhere. He will go crazy because you looked at some guy when you were ordering a beer, and he will say, well, what have you had with this guy? Or because you met an ex of yours and had a coffee, and he will say, well, how can you meet that ex and have a coffee? You don't know how that makes me feel. And you think, whoa, how can this otherwise great guy act like this? What is going on? And then, you know, after that, he says he's sorry, and you explain yourself, and you say, I wasn't looking at the guy in the bar, or like, I was just meeting my ex, we have nothing in common, like, we don't like each other anymore, it's just a friend, but okay, if you want to, I can stop meeting him. Things turn back to normal, things are great again, you might go on a trip, there might be flowers, there might be great political discussions, you might start a project together, and so on, and then comes the next time. And then you have, say, at a point where there is some kind of commitment. Like, here you move in together, for example. So you might get rid of your apartment and you move into his apartment. Or he might get rid of his apartment, he moves into your apartment. By that time, things go really bad. And after that, the relationship goes like this. So that even the good times will never be at the high that was in the beginning, right? So the good times will not even be as good as the bad times that were in the beginning. And after that, it just escalates down and down and down. And you think, well, what happened to the great guy that I met in the beginning? Like the guy that said I was amazing, the guy that had all the opinions in common with me, the guy that, you know, said I was perfect and promised me all these things and that was always in a good mood and did everything for me. After that, somehow the guy magically has changed. But you will still, and this is the important thing, there will always be the treatment of hot and cold. And I will say, if there's something that characterizes abusive relationships, There might be violence or there might not be violence, but what really characterizes them is that he has a kind of torture tactic that's hot and cold, that is common to all abusers, that they will one day be nice to you and the next day they will be awful to you, and then they will be nice to you again and so on. And this is what creates the so-called traumatic bonding, because at that point, not only is he caught in the cycle, you are caught in the cycle, because when you're at the low, and when you're lying on the ground and he's screaming at you that you're a whore and that you're a pussy and that you're the worst person in the world and nobody's ever going to love you, you're just waiting for that to pass and to get up again, right? So this is how it goes down and down and down, but you still will never have peace. And that's why a lot of women, this is very common in women who are both being abused in the relationship. It's common to women who are victims of sexual abuse and women who are victims of prostitution and women who are victims of any type of abuse, is that at some point you almost wish for the abuse to happen so that you can get back to the time that he will say, I'm sorry, and that he can be calm. A lot of victims of prostitution say, you're just waiting for the rape to happen because after the rape, there's no more rape. After the rape, there's calm. So you just wait for that to end, and for it to end, it has to start. So you're almost waiting for it to start. And typically the abuse will mount and mount over a period of weeks until you get to a bout of anger outburst, after which you will get up again, and then you will go down again, and it will go on. And this can be repeated for years and years and years, but you will never get back to how it was in the beginning. And the beginning is typically the time when you are mostly outward with your relationship. Everybody knows that you have a new boyfriend, you're seen everywhere with that boyfriend, everybody knows you have a new boyfriend, you present him to everyone, he's showing himself in his best light, everybody thinks what a great guy. After this point, you are isolated. You don't meet your friends that often anymore. You might not even be allowed to meet your family that much because he says that your family are not good people. You might meet his family a lot, but you don't really meet your friends that often. Also because you yourself don't really feel like it, because at this point, you're getting into some type of depression where you don't think life is fun anymore. So it makes you not really want to meet your friends again. So of course to the world, you're still up there. And that's what the world thinks. So if somebody was to ask, okay, so how is she or he doing? Oh, they're great, this is a great couple, it's a perfect couple. Often the abusive relationships are the typical relationships in your surroundings that everybody will think this is the perfect couple because you see them up there. And this is what you call the grooming phase, or the love bombing phase. So when he's doing the love bombing, he can do things that will win over even the most skeptical person. And because these people, especially if they are narcissist abusers, are really good at psychology, they will immediately suss people out in your surroundings and know, who will be a danger here. So if you have a friend, for example, who specializes in violence against women, this guy will think, uh-oh, that person will be a problem. So it is that person that he will either try to win over by speaking about how he's so engaged in violence against women, how it's so awful, how can men do this, or he will try to isolate you from that person. So somehow he's going to make that person not a threat to him, right? But of course, because he's won everybody over here, the woman is imbibed with a sense of shame, because she's ashamed because she was going around with her boyfriend everywhere in this space. And everybody was saying, wow, so happy, right? And then she's here, and how is she going to explain that this same guy is now having her on the floor, kicking her, screaming things at her? How is she going to explain that this guy did it? And when she herself has told everybody what a great guy that person is. Often these people, especially the narcissist abusers, are really adamant about showing the relationship to the outside world. So they will, for example, pressure with one way or another the woman to put pictures of them together on social media, or somehow make the relationship public, which also is kind of a tie, because once she's made it public to all of her social circle, it's more difficult to leave, of course. So it is by this point, when there is a tie, that you can tell that things are going to go downwards quite fast. Often these guys can be very subtle. They can shape a narrative of you versus him in a very manipulative way. So with some things that the woman said in the beginning, for example, she might have divulged that, oh, I was in a relationship that wasn't so good because the guy did this and that to me. He will exaggerate that fact and say, oh, because you had problems in all your relationships and I didn't. So you're obviously a person that fights a lot. And he will come back and come back and come back to that fact. Or if the woman, for example, said to the guy that she was raped sometime, he will use that fact and distort it. So to create a narrative of, she's a problematic person, I'm a good person, right? And he will repeat and repeat and repeat this again until she actually believes that this is the truth. Or for example, say that in the beginning he can say, oh, I love your food, you're great at cooking, or you are like the perfect wife, you are so clean. And then at this point he can start saying, you're a lousy housewife, you don't do anything at home, your cooking sucks, I don't want to eat your food, and so on. And he will again and again and again repeat these things until it becomes a narrative of how she was somehow a problematic, broken person, whereas he was a perfect person. Now, what is this essentially? This is preparing the crime, because he knows that he's abusive somehow. He knows this. So what he's going to do is set the stage for that abuse to be blamed on her, right? So that means that whenever he will have these anger bouts, he will then be able to say, well, you know I was a perfect person before, so this might be because of you. So you created this person. I was a perfect person before, but because you're like this, you provoke me and you make me into this devil that I am not, right? And that's why it's important to him to portray her as a kind of angry, crazy person, and him as the perfect person, because then that will be, the abuse will be blamed on her, and she will feel, what have I done? I have destroyed this great guy. I met this great guy, and now because of me, I'm destroying him, and look what he became, right? Another thing that is very common in abusive relationships are circular arguments that don't lead anywhere, but that make the woman like bang her head to the wall out of frustration because she feels that things are not going anywhere. He might wake her up at night with some problem that he has about her and that he wants her to think about. Why did you do this? Why did you say this to me? Why did you talk to that guy? Why didn't you clean up this thing? Why did you behave like this? And have endless discussions that don't end in order just to tire her and drive her crazy. All abusers have in common that they have a sense of entitlement, and this is the root of their thinking. This is what abusers in relationships, buyers of prostitution, pornography viewers, and all types of different abusive men have in common. They have a sense of entitlement. They believe they have the right to, and that anybody who questions their entitlement is oppressing them, right? Now, as visibility of abuse has become more and more common, there are now laws against abuse in most countries. We are speaking every day more about violence against women. It's such a common topic that people think, oh, we've already solved this issue because everybody's talking about it, so it's a boring issue and we don't need to talk about it, right? Abusers have changed tactics. And this is like the thing that laws have not caught up with. A lot of them have resorted to more subtle tactics. If one were to read the book, for example, by Spanish woman Paula Zubiao, who wrote the book Gritos Silenciosos, Silent Screams, she describes an abuser during the Franco era, during dictatorship era. That type of abuser was the old style abuser, who by the way still exists, but who is the typical model of an abuser in a dictatorship. He will model the type of male power in that country at the time. So when Spain, for example, had a dictator that was the one who decided everything, male abusers at home will emulate that tactic and act like that themselves. So her abuser would say, I'm God in this house, I decide, you have to be the woman of 10 points, which means you have to do everything I say, and if you do anything that I disapprove of, you deserve a beating, because that's the way that I teach you how to act. Now, those abusers today would not pass as easily, because today we live in the postmodern era where after the revolutions, sexual revolutions, social revolutions, feminist revolutions, class revolutions, and so on, the rhetoric has changed. So abusers now typically will adopt the identity of the victims, right? Which would be extremely embarrassing to the old style abuser. The old style patriarchal abuser will say, I'm not a victim, I'm a man, I decide in my home, of course. He would see it as a weakness if anybody were to say that he could be a victim of a woman. Of course he could not, because he's a man and he decides, right? Now the new type of abuser is the opposite. He will say, no, she's actually abusing me. I'm such a great guy. I am the victim of female abuse. So he will use the words oppression, he will use the words stigmatizing and things like that. So to present himself as the one who should need sympathy, right? And this is the rhetoric not only of individual abusers, but of men for internet forums and of men's rights movements and so on. They no longer say, we are men and we're entitled to this. They say, we are oppressed, the women are taking control. For us, we are being beat up by women, we are so defenseless. And often they are found in groups for abused women online. So they will typically cater to these groups in order to win sympathy from abused women and say, oh, I know how you feel, I was abused by my ex-wife as well, and people think men cannot go through this, but really, she was awful, like, you don't believe what some women can do. Some women are just like men and they can abuse men as well. And of course women feel sympathy to this. They think, oh look, here's somebody who understands me, he's been through the same thing. Well, what is that now? Now we're up here. We're up here again. This is grooming. This is a type of way to groom women to again feel like they've met their soulmate. And as Lonnie Bancroft says in this book, most men, not all, but most men who present themselves as having been abused by women are actually abusers themselves. So, what are the different types of abusers? Okay, what do I do now? Wait, let's see some waterworks. I hope this is not a permanent pen. Okay, perfect. I don't know if you see from there like what I'm going to write. Are you able to see from the back? Okay, so first I will go through some of the abuser types of the old style, the dictator type of abusers. The first thing we have is the demand man. The demand man is a type of abuser that wants a servant. He wants everything to be done at home for him. So he will expect dinner on the table when he comes home. And if it's not there, he will throw a fit, right? He will expect the house to be clean. It doesn't matter if the wife is at home with 3 small kids, he will still expect everything to be done for him.